Hello everyone, Soulsborne Fanatic here. Today we're back with a tier list. I haven't done a tier list in quite some time now, and I think this is a tier list that I have some knowledge in. I've done graphic design before, not that I'm an expert. I would say my graphic design work is pretty bad, but I think I have a good taste for good cover arts. Cover art typically is pretty boring in the gaming industry nowadays. But the Soulsborne cover arts are pretty cool, some of them. Others, not so much. Let's just get right into it. So up first is the Dark Souls limited edition cover art. I've never seen this cover art before. It looks interesting though. It's the Elite Knight Armor set, the Silver Knight reflecting. This is a European only, I guess. I've never seen this. It looks alright, and it's not really anything that special though. I would say this is probably a C tier cover art. Maybe it'd look cool in a steelbook. I don't know if that is a steelbook or not, but that's really just looks alright. Dark Souls 3 cover art. So this just has Soul Cinder. Pretty typical Dark Souls cover art. They've done something like this for the last two games. You know, you got Dark Souls 3, Soul Cinder, Skull of the First Sin, Final Boss also. Pretty typical. I'd put this at a B tier. I would say this is about what you'd expect from a Dark Souls cover art. You know, you got the final boss on the cover, and he's doing some weird pose thing. Art looks really nice. It really just how he's like holding and there's dust coming out of his hand. That looks pretty cool. I would say this is very, very fair at a B tier. Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. So this has the final boss of Dark Souls 2. Scholar of the First Sin. Where they fixed Dark Souls 2, because originally Dark Souls, how they advertised it, it wasn't the same as they advertised it, so they had to re-release it. Scholar of the First Sin. I don't know the differences between the two, but I know Scholar of the First Sin is the better game. But this cover art, honestly, is more or less the same as Dark Souls 3. Yet I think this one looks not as good. It looks alright. It just feels kind of uninspired like Dark Souls 2. I put that at a C tier, low C tier. Up next is the Bloodborne. This is the Game of the Year edition. This has, for some reason, they felt the need to add ratings onto it. 10 out of 10 out of 10. And they have Japan Studio and From Software. You got Lady Maria down there because it comes bundled with a DLC. You know, I think everything here looks fine. It's just that this really just takes away from the cover art, in my opinion. I think that's a pretty good cover art, though. I think the original cover art for Dark Souls 2, for Bloodborne, is better, though. I would say this is probably a B tier cover art. Low B tier, because I like what they did for that. It's just that stuff really just takes away, in my opinion. So up next is Bloodborne The Old Hunters. I don't remember this Bloodborne cover art. I think this is just The Old Hunters. But this looks okay, I guess. I put it at a B tier. It's just that, but taking up the whole thing. That looks nice. So up next is the Dark Souls Remastered, which is the most uninspired cover art they've done. They just took the model from in-game, made it look a little better, put it as a cover art, and then put Remastered in the Dark Souls. I would say this is probably the laziest cover art that they've ever done. And I'd put this at a D tier. Compared to the original Dark Souls, even the original, I think the original looks better. And the one that Japan got looks a lot better as well. Back to Bloodborne. This is the cover art that I personally own. It's the white one. This one looks pretty cool. I like it better, honestly, better than the older one. I don't know exactly what the difference is between that Bloodborne and the other Bloodborne, but this one looks pretty cool. You know, you got Yarnum in the hunter's back. Got some blood right there. You know, it's a pretty cool cover art. I would say this is probably the first A tier cover art. Maybe even. I think I might want to put this at S tier, honestly. Because it's such a good cover art. It just looks so right. You know, that's cover art for Bloodborne is probably my personal favorite out of all of the cover arts. So this is just a standard Bloodborne cover art. Yardum Hunter. This is... I put this at an A tier. I'm biased. Yeah, I'm biased. I think it looks... It really just tells you everything you need to know. You know, Yardum Hunter. Looks alright. I like it. Alright, so this is the cover art for Sekiro. I don't really care for this cover art, honestly. Personally, I think it looks a bit scuffed. Not to insult Sekiro at all. I have never played Sekiro. I think it's probably a good game though, but this cover art looks kind of scuffed. It looks weird. They got his face darkened out. He got his arms stretched, and it looks weird. I'm not a fan of this. I'm not a fan of this at all. I think I'd put this in C tier as well for Sekiro's cover art. Not the best cover art that they've done. Another cover art for Sekiro. This one looks way better. Easily way better. I like the art direction here. It looks way better. You can actually see his face. That looks pretty cool. I like the Sekiro cover art. I put this, I don't know, A tier or B tier? Probably an A tier. I think A tier is very fair for that one. So is this Dark Souls 3? Apocalypse Edition. What? I've never seen this before. What? That just looks bad. That's a bad cover art. That's a terrible cover art. That's D tier. I don't know. I think I'd put that. That's the lowest one so far. That's the most uninspired cover art I've ever seen. I don't know. Maybe this one's worse. I think those two are terrible. What were they thinking? Alright, so here's Dark Souls 3: The Fire Faded edition. I've never seen this cover art before, in physically. I've seen it digitally. I'll ask him right now, but this looks cool. You know, you got the painter, you got Gale right there. I would say this is probably an A tier cover art. I'm a fan of this. Maybe I'd even put it at S tier. I don't know. If it's an S tier, it's an S tier. But if it's an A tier, it's probably high A tier. I think I'd put it at S, honestly, because it just looks cool. Up next is Dark Souls 2 again, Black Armour edition. Never seen this one before. Looks alright, I guess. You know, it kind of looks like the Dark Souls cover art. This one right here, but a close-up. This is alright. I would say this is probably a B tier cover art. I'm not really a fan of the Dark Souls 2 armor that they use in the promotional material, but looks alright. So here's the Fire Fades edition for PC Russia. What the hell? So, yeah, I've seen this cover art before. I'm guessing this is probably a Japan only one, and this is the one that they used everywhere else. I think this probably looks better than this cover art, because I like how the Soul Cinder looks better like this, but the awards and stuff, it just really ruins it. It gets in the way. I'm not a fan of that when they do that stuff. I would say this is probably a high C tier cover art. Looks alright. Demon Souls. I was wondering when we were going to get Demon Souls. I am a fan of the Demon Souls cover art. I think it looks pretty cool. Although it's just a 3D model that they slapped in. Demon Souls was the first Souls game yet. Dark Souls is the one that got remembered for the most part. I haven't played much of Demon Souls personally. Maybe when I get a PS5 I'll play it for the channel, but I've never played Demon Souls very much. I think I'll put this at a C tier. I know that the PS5 one is basically a 3D model as well, but I think the PS5 one probably looks better. Up next is the Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition. So this just has a Torius. You know, this is probably a B tier cover art. You know, it looks alright. So here's the Japanese cover art for Demon Souls. I would say I think I'd personally like the American one more. The American one, I think that's the American. Yeah, that's the American one, because that's the one because Atlas published it in the West. But the Demon Souls one looks similar to the American Dark Souls one. This one, I mean, it's not bad or anything. It's just I think I'd personally put it at a B tier because it looks better. Dark Souls 2. This is the original Dark Souls 2 cover art. I'm not a fan of this. It's extremely gray. It doesn't look very good at all. I think I'd probably put this a little bit above that one, being fair enough. Demon Souls. So this just has your Demon Souls guy. I think it would have been a lot cooler to have it like more zoomed in. I think it's a little too zoomed out, but I'm a fan of this cover art. You know, it looks alright. I haven't played the Demon Souls remake. I don't know how it is, but that's alright. I think I'd put that at a high C tier. Up next is the Japanese cover art for Dark Souls. I am a fan of this cover art. It looks really nice. This is probably the best cover art. One of the best cover arts that they've done. I think I'd put this at an S tier. Extremely iconic. This is a wallpaper that I have. I'm a really big fan of this cover art. It tells you everything you need to know. Undead, Chosen One, Bonfire, Dark Souls. And there's nothing like a whole bunch of awards and stuff in the way. It just looks right. So another Dark Souls 2 cover art. How many Dark Souls 2 cover arts are there? I like this one better than all the other Dark Souls cover arts. I'm automatically gonna put this at a higher B tier, because that one actually looks pretty cool. I don't know what he's holding right there, but you got the forest in the background that you see. I got the armor. I think that looks better than the other cover arts for Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 again. My god. So this is that knight guy that you see in Scholar of Sin. I haven't played enough Dark Souls 2 to reach where he is, but I think this is a king actually. I'm speaking on stuff I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a fan of this. It's way too dark. I get that it's called Dark Souls, but the cover doesn't need to be dark to get across the point. I think if you were to be a little bit brighter, it would look better. I'm going to put that as a low C tier. Up next is the American Dark Souls cover art. This doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good, honestly. You know, they got two knights that they just copy and pasted. I think that's copy and pasted as well. It's just not really that good. I don't like this cover art. I think I'd put this at a low D tier. Up next is Elden Ring. It's not different anywhere else. I love to see what they do for when the inevitable Game of the Year edition, because I am a big fan of the Elden Ring cover art. It has Vike as the main person. It got the Elden Ring in the background, the lands between. It looks really, really good. Everyone thought it was the Tarnished wearing the Raging Wolf armor. I thought so as well, but apparently that's Vike. I think that maybe Vike was I know in the lore he was going to become Elden Lord, but he went crazy from the frenzy. I am a really big fan of this cover art. I think I'd put this cover art at S tier. It's probably one of my favorites. Up next is another Sekiro cover art. This one automatically looks better than this monstrosity, but I don't think it looks as good as this Sekiro cover art. I think I'd put that at a B tier. That looks very Sekiro. They got the Game of the Year edition sticker in the way. I like this cover art. So that's my list. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below about which cover arts. Did I slander you cover arts that you like? Did I get it right? That's about it. See ya.